Dudley Evanson, and welcome to my sunroom here. I'm just grateful to be living out in nature, and living in nature or relating to nature is something that I really want to talk about in terms of how important it is for our mental health. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot lately is about people living in cities. Dean and I are fortunate because since forever we've always wanted to live on a mountaintop or at the edge of the desert or someplace that's surrounded by nature, and we do now. We live by a wild river, we're surrounded by forests and gardens, but everyone can't live out in the country. So many people live in cities today. It's just the way it is. But how can we bring nature into our lives in terms of if we do happen to live in a city and that kind of thing? The other day I was sitting down by the river with a couple of my elder friends, and we just got to thinking about how do people exist in a good way in an urban area and keep their relationship with nature. One of my friends walks a lot, and she's very she lives in a city, but she gets out and she walks. There's a park that's within walking distance, and so I encourage people who do live in urban areas to enjoy and identify the parks and the natural areas that are near them, especially if they're near enough to walk to. That's one thing. It's great if you have a park. I mean, New York City, probably the busiest city in our country, is got Central Park, and that's so important. In our local community here in the Northwest, we recently were able to save a 100-acre forest and preserve it so that the people who do live in the city can enjoy it. We've been involved in many greenways levies that have helped to purchase different kinds of natural areas, and whether they're places where kids play sports or people go on hikes and trails, it's all a good part of that. So obviously it's great if you can go to a park. My friend also has her own apartment just full of plants, and there can't be anything better than that. She actually grows food. She's a gardener. She's part of a community garden, and so she has her own garden there. She even has to get in her car and drive to it, but at least it's a place that she can grow vegetables and foods that she's going to eat later. That's one thing. She also happens to grow food on her she's got a little balcony area, and so it's just full of plants. I mention that because growing food in the place where you live is a possibility. This plant right here is lettuce. This is actually grown in our yard, but I transplanted it into this pot, and it's just like edible. You've got dinner. I also recommend growing sprouts. Think about food. So what can you grow in your urban area? You can grow sprouts, you can grow microgreens. Microgreens could be grown in a tray with a little bit of dirt on it. You sprinkle in sunflower seeds or buckwheat or some kind of plant, and then it sprouts up and you eat it, so you have fresh food all the time. So that's another way to bring nature into your home if you live in a city. I've heard about people who plant on their rooftops, and so rooftop gardens, boy, wouldn't that be a nice thing to just imagine looking at an urban area, and instead of seeing just whatever they have on top of roofs, which is usually not too much, what if they could have gardens on the roof and go upstairs, pick their vegetables for the evening dinner? That's one way. Community, they're almost called pocket gardens or pocket parks. That's another thing I've heard about. I have friends in New York City who actually are part of gardening groups there, and they have little pocket areas, and these would be like unused areas. Maybe someday a building will be there, but at the moment nobody's using it for anything, but just it would be growing weeds and bushes and that sort of thing. But people have been able to arrange to put gardens right there in their own neighborhood and grow food and flowers and that sort of thing. The other thing about being in an urban area, there are often a lot of beautiful flower shops. I remember living in New York City years ago and how nice it was. There was so much fresh flowers, and of course they would also have fruit and vegetables and that kind of thing that are for sale. But the flowers, if you can bring flowers into your home, freshen it up. So what are some other ways? I guess the thing that was so significant to me in terms of the importance of it is what we've been learning lately about mental health and how people these days are struggling so much with their own mental health issues. And often children and teenagers are, they're like in transition times in their lives, and it's very, very difficult to figure out who am I, and especially when your main relationship often with people is simply on that little screen, that phone that you're always looking at, and you think you're connecting with the world, but really you're not. So how to turn off those screens, put them away, don't leave the ringer on, just try to avoid that screen time and not be so dependent on it. So those are just a couple of ideas that people have come up with in terms of living in urban areas but bringing nature in. Years ago, I read a report, it was a British study that had identified that children living in urban areas have very little contact with nature. They call it nature deficit disorder. And it isn't recognized as a medical problem yet, but I think we as a society are seeing that our lack of connection with nature is contributing to our mental unrest, our disconnect from others, people, and the life around us. So these are just a couple of ideas to make it more beautiful and healthy in our lives. Someone also mentioned volunteering for stream restoration. Often there's rivers or streams that run through towns, and there are local community groups that are working to keep those natural areas healthy, and they need volunteers. So being able to participate with other people in your community, so you're doing two things. One, you're being in nature. The other thing is you're also connecting with other human beings and feeling like you're doing something good. Because doing service is a way that we can feel important, that our lives are meaningful, and that we're not just the same old grind. So those are just a couple of things. We live in the Northwest, and we're very fortunate that our community identified a long time ago that greenways, trails are important to connect, so that people like to ride their bikes around the town, but they're going connected with trails. Every community hasn't put that in place yet, but there are many groups that are working on that all over the country. So whether you live in a very large city or even a small town, but you're still going to be surrounded by cars, the more you can get out and walk and ride a bike if you're still comfortable riding a bike, any of those things, those are all going to help you to feel that you're part of this world, that you're part of this beautiful planet that we live on. And when we feel that we're connected with it, then we can take more responsibility, we have more empathy. Those are some qualities, some human qualities that show up when we connect with nature. And of course, you can always arrange to get out of town every now and then, because I know just taking a break sometime is really important. What Dean, my husband, and I have done for many years is create music that includes the sounds of nature. So I would add also that being able to listen on headphones to natural sounds or to music that includes natural sounds is another way that one can bring nature into our inner beings. And so the reason that we originally wanted to put the nature sounds with the music is because we knew people in cities were living very high stress lives. They didn't know how to overcome that. But what we were hoping is that if they were listening to our music or watching some of our nature music videos that we make, that it would help them to have a greater appreciation for the planet and our connection with Native American wisdom keepers that we've met over the many years, and we've really paid attention to the things that they care about. They spoke of Mother Earth, that the planet is like a loving mother that provides for all of our needs. But if we can't, if we don't know how to give back, and we're just taking, it's just a one-way thing, and it's not going to we can't keep replenishing. It's like why I always compost. You know, I don't throw my food waste out into the garbage. It just makes it smelly and messy. What I do instead is I have a little bucket, and I save it and then put it all out in a composter outside. It's a place that lets it compost slowly. My niece many years ago did a video, and she lived in Brooklyn, and she really worked on getting compost in cities, that you could actually do compost in cities, and you make great dirt, and then the worms come and cultivate it even more, and then you bring it into your house, and it doesn't smell. It's just good, healthy dirt, and then put it in planters or pots, and you can grow vegetables and flowers and all kinds of things. So just considering the cycle of life, it's a circle. It's not a one-way thing. We can't just keep taking. Nature gives so much to us, and that's why we want to learn to give back, but we also want to learn to have a deeper and a friendlier connection with the natural world around us. Hope this helps inspire you in some way to bring nature into your world, and especially into the world of children that you might have in your family or nearby. I've heard a lot of great stories about the successful gardens that schools have created, where children plant the seeds and water them and watch them grow, and then are able to eat the vegetables that come from them. So there's no better way to get a child to eat healthy than to have them participate in growing the food itself. So grow your own, plant, water. All you need is a little sunlight, a little dirt, and some water, and you're good. It's all just part of nature. So peace be to nature and to your own world. Blessings.